My action research project that I did for my master's program. This is the last step that I have to do. After this, we're good to go. Alright, so a little introduction to myself, even though most of you guys know this, it's more for them. I graduated from Colby-Sawyer in 2005 with a psych degree. Sorry, Diane. I've been working here as a para for the last 7 years in the behavioral program. I'm graduating, hopefully soon, in December, with my master's degree, and I'm pursuing my teacher certification in math. Hopefully that'll happen sooner than later, by next year.
Let's hope so.
But anyways, my psych degree is what led me to this action research project, which is kind of more looking at the behavior of the kids. So my question is, how can teachers effectively manage the students in their classroom to ensure that the most learning can take place? Because one of the most important things is classroom management, and I don't think they go over it too well in the teaching standpoint, as I've seen somewhat this year. Alright, so my participants in my setting, it took place right here. I had 17 kids. It was in a general pre-algebra math class. It took place the period right after lunch, and I actually got to look at all the classes before I selected that one to do. And it was the most boisterous, loud class, so I figured this would be a good standpoint. And obviously in a rural, regional public school, you guys know that, they might not. And I think there were about 475 kids at the time the study took place. Alright, so the first step was to develop a behavior chart, which is up there. The camera can't see, I'll have it on the slideshow. Just to establish rules with the kids so they know what good behavior looks like, because I don't think it'd be fair to throw them into a study when they didn't get the guidelines. So we created a poster together, and they actually came up with all that stuff on their own, which is right here. I didn't really have to poke or prod. Usually you can develop it with the kids if they can't come up with it on their own. So that's what we came up with. And then the next step was I had to go over with them what a consequence was. And coming from the psych perspective, the behavior psych, they call it the ABCs. There's an antecedent, there's behavior, and a consequence. So something happens, somebody responds, and then something either diminishes the behavior or reinforces it. And the kids, it was interesting because they thought just consequences were something that they got when they acted bad or something bad happened. So luckily going over this, I think enlightened them a little more to look for later on in the study when they're doing their daily tickets. They know that a consequence isn't just stop that, get back to work. It could be a good job and reinforcing. So then the first thing that I had them do was complete a free write for a qualitative piece of data, and it looked like this. So when I don't follow the rules, the consequences that matter most to me are. And I think I may have given it too quick after I went over what a consequence was, because I was hoping that they would just pick one type, either punishment or reinforcement, but a lot of them were saying, well, I like candy when I act this way, and I like to be scared to keep me on my best behavior, and blah, blah, blah. So I was hoping for one, but they kind of went off on their own. And then the survey that they completed, they basically rated how well they thought they behaved during class, how often they thought they were spoken to, and then it went on to say what type of behavior keeps you on your best what type of consequence keeps you on your best behavior. And they got to rate a 1 through 5, and I gave them a choice of 13 or so options, and it was a mixture of punishment and reinforcement. So I was just hoping to sneak it in there. And then the next question was actually what they thought was used most commonly in the school. And then the teachers, some of you guys took this survey, it was the same exact thing as that, except they weren't rating how well they thought they behaved, but they were rating on how well they thought their class was behaved and how often they thought they had to speak to their class, which looked pretty similar. And then the ongoing data collection, from the kids' standpoint, they had to complete a daily ticket out the door where they rated on a 1 to 4 how well they thought the class overall behaved, and if they received any consequence, whether a positive or a negative consequence, so punishment or reinforcement. And then they just circled, well, this is what the ticket looked like, and that one should be scooted over, but there was a little formatting issue when I was switching it over to PowerPoint. So they'd circle positive or negative, and then explain why they received it, so I could get a better grasp. Some kids were like, I behaved well in class today. It's like, well, Was that a positive read? Like, there was no consequence to go along with that, so I had to disregard it. And then for the teacher's point of view, they had also a daily ticket out the door, where they rated how well they thought the class behaved, and also how often they had to speak to the class. And I kind of clumped it so it wasn't just 1, 2, 3, and 4, but there were different ratings. And then for myself, to get a triangulation going on, if you will, so we could catch all the consequences given out. The students were recording what they thought, the teacher was recording what they thought, and I was also keeping a tally of how often that I saw the teacher give a consequence out. And actually, when I first started the first week, I found myself going around to kids and being like, she said, good job, write that down, or you got spoken to, make sure you write that down. But then I was like, that's kind of not what I want to be looking at. And it's interesting because in the end I found that you were saying, or the teacher, sorry, was saying more consequences or giving more consequences than the kids were actually writing down. And I could justify that because I was also keeping track. All right, and then finally they took the survey again in the end so I could see if their ideas had changed after the study was complete. And then, so here's the results of the free write, which is interesting because this is only out of 17 students, so don't let the percents be too intimidating. About half of those kids picked both in their free write. They had mentioned some sort of reinforcement and some sort of punishment, where the other half, which is almost evenly split between reinforcement and punishment, the 13% up there that has none was somebody that was like, no consequences affect me, I don't care about blah, blah, blah. So they had just that attitude. All right, and this is the results from the first 2 questions on the survey, how well the kids thought they behaved and how often they were spoken to. So the majority of the kids all said they strongly agree that they were well behaved in class. The other ones agreed that they were well behaved. And I think there was only one that disagreed, but then agreed that they were spoken to often. Everybody else was strongly disagreed they were spoken to often, or just agreed they were not spoken to often. Alright, and so this is the results from the survey. The numbers that are bold are the ones that stood out to me more so than the rest. So, as the consequences they thought worked best in the beginning, when they first took the survey, they were punishment, so fear of suspension, another punishment, which was fear of expulsion, and then receiving a soda or a drink, which is something we don't even do. So I think it just appealed to them more than any of the others, because I was like, if I had that option, then I could definitely, I want that.
They wanted to make sure they got enough salt water.
Or caffeine. So, and then the second part was what they thought was most commonly used. And they picked fear of detention, which is a punishment, and also fear of their parents being called, which is another punishment. So keep that in mind. And then the teacher survey. So this is, I only surveyed 6 teachers.
The science meeting is starting now in Kat Wilson's room.
Alright, so the teachers mostly agree that their classes are well behaved. There was one teacher that disagreed, and they said they had to speak often to them. The rest of them said they disagree they have to speak that often, except for one agreed, yeah, I have to speak to them often, but they're also well behaved. Which is interesting. Alright, so coming from the teachers' survey, what they think works best, or what they use, is praise and compliments, and more free time in class, both reinforcement. And what they think the school uses the most is praise or compliments, which is also reinforcement. Now, if you remember, the students said that punishment works best on them to keep them on their best behavior, and they also view the school as using punishment more often, which could just be a stereotype.
Do you begin what you want?
Yeah, well, yeah, in the end, yeah. Okay. If you guys want to write stuff down, anything that you come up with, I would love to include in my final manuscript. Alright, so this is the interesting one. This is the ticket out the door. This is the kids and how many consequences that they had written down. Or wait, hold on. No, how well they thought the class behaved on a regular basis. So the majority, for the first 2 weeks, the majority of the kids strongly agreed, that'd be the blue, strongly agreed the class behaved well. The red is they agreed. So nobody disagreed or strongly disagreed that the class was not behaving well, or behaved well. And then the last week, there was somebody that disagreed. And then finally down here, somebody strongly disagreed. And I didn't know if that was just an outlier, somebody was in a rush to get out of class, circled the wrong thing. But later on, through the teacher's ticket out the door, it shows up that this teacher didn't think they behaved too well on that day either.
You got a spelling error on disagree on green strongly.
Actually, I think that's just, it got cut out of the graph.
No,
When I-
It says
G
disarge.
is
You got
Yeah, yeah.
disarge.
Right, but when I
No, it
pasted
should
the...
be GR instead of RG.
Gotcha. Alright, so the ticket out the door for the number of... So these are just the different types of consequences. Red are the negative consequences, so punishment, and blue is the positive, or the reinforcement, on a daily basis. So in the start, I think these first couple of days are where I was nudging the kids and being like, write this down, write this down. And as you can see, as it faded off, the kids either stopped keeping track or weren't paying attention when consequences were being given, because the teacher and myself still kept track of them, so it kind of faded off. In a couple of days, I think it was towards the end here, they had a quiz as well, so usually it's kind of quiet in there. And this is the teacher's daily evaluation, mostly 3s, meaning this person agreed or strongly agreed the class behaved well, all the way down until that 2. Where it was right around that area where somebody disagreed.
I think we had a fire drill that day.
Did we? We could have had a fire drill. Alright, so this is how often the teacher speaks to the class off of the teacher's daily evaluation. And so this is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and all the way down to the end where, again, she had to speak a lot to the class at that point in time, and that's where the disagreement came in.
Speaking about behavior being off task, is that what you mean?
What's that? Yeah, either just any kind of consequence that was given. If the students were doing well.
You mean like directing and redirecting behavior?
Could be redirecting or just reinforcing. So however she felt, the teacher felt that she spoke to the class, she just kept a track.
Positive or negative.
Positive or
Right.
negative. Alright, and this was my daily behavior rating, and it's pretty much just 9 and 10 the entire time, because I felt that the class behaved very well throughout the study. I mean, if they were doing what they were supposed to be and there was a little chatter, I still felt they were well behaved. This is the tally of consequences that I kept. So even in the last week or so when there was none down here, I still found that it was between 3, even up to 5 times that the teacher was speaking to the class that they weren't even noticing. So I don't know if it was just later in the study that they were finally just done with this. And I actually told them that I would give them a pizza party, which I did end up giving to make them more involved in this.
That's a good consequence.